So here's the project opened in Microsoft Visual Studio Code, which is Microsoft's web development IDE, which I can strongly recommend for Vue.js development. And attached to this video, you find a PDF with my configuration and also some alternatives. And this is what Nuxt created us, or what Create Nuxt gave us. A folder, a project with a lot of folders and files. So let's walk through that quickly and let's see what leads to this screen here. Now, I will give details about all these folders later in this course. Assets essentially is for storing images and so on, which will be then handled through Webpack, the build tool behind the scenes, so that the images are optimized a bit and so on. Components is where you create ordinary Vue components to use in your app. Layouts is some master layouts which you can use as frames, and I will dive deeper into that whole layouts, components, and how they relate thing. Middleware is some middleware you can add to run whenever a user visits a certain page. We'll also have a look at this later when we talk about authentication. Pages is the heart of this folder, and I will come back to it in a second. Plugins is important to add some shared functionality in your Nuxt app, and this will become clearer later also, so let's ignore it for now. Static can be used to store some static assets, which, unlike the things you store in assets, should not be handled by Webpack, so should not be optimized by Webpack, and so on. Store can be used to add a Vuex store to your Nuxt project. Also something we'll have a look at in a separate module. And then some config files regarding Git and so on, but also most important about Nuxt. Now, we will revisit this file in detail later. In this file, we see which kind of Nuxt app we're getting. We have this strange thing, which will become important for rendering appropriate meta tags on each page. And we can set up a couple of other things. Again, we'll dive into this in detail later. Now, I said that sentence a lot, but we have a whole course, right? So let's instead focus on what we see on the screen here. And the important folder for this is the Pages folder. One important thing I can already say to you is that, as I said on an earlier slide, Nuxt is all about configuring the project through folders and files. You have one config file, but you mostly set everything up by naming your folders and files correctly. So the folder names here all are set, you can't change them. And there's one rule Nuxt simply follows. Files in Pages have to be Vue components, single file components, as it is here for the index.vue file, and will then be interpreted as routes, as URLs you can visit. If you have index.vue here, this simply means if you just enter localhost / nothing, this page, this component will be rendered to the screen. Behind the scenes, this uses Vue Router, but it sets everything up with Vue Router for you. And we'll dive much deeper into this in the next course module already. But here, this is essentially what we see on the screen. A single file Vue component with a template where we render some HTML code and where we even use some other Vue component which we can include here. Again, more on this later. And then some styling. And therefore, if we go here and we remove this div here and simply say, hello, I'm a first Vue Nuxt app, and we save that, and you still have that process running, it will automatically watch these changes and re-render your page, even hot reload the page, so that if you go back to localhost 3000, you just see that. And this is one core takeaway. This page, for one, is rendered on this node server that's running. We don't see that really, but that is happening. And that is something we can confirm if we reload this app here simply. And then we inspect the source code. We can see that we see in the source code what we see on the page. Hello, I'm a first Vue Nuxt app. It's part of the source code. And if you inspect a normal Vue single page application, which you create without Nuxt, and you have a look at the source code, you will just see some hook here, like a root div, where Vue will then render everything in the client. Now here it's already coming like this from the server. So this is the first important takeaway. This is really pre-rendered on the server. The second important takeaway is that we configure everything through folders and files, like the routing. We simply add files to pages. We can add another route, users.vue, and simply add a template in there where we say, this is the users page, nothing else, don't even add a script section and so on to this file. And now with the addition of just this file, we can go back and simply enter /users behind localhost 3000 and you should see this page. Or reload once if you don't see it immediately. This then simply is related to the configuration not updating immediately on the dev server. But this is the principle by which it works. Every file here in pages is interpreted as a route. Now there's a bit more to it, and you can also add dynamic route parameters, but that's something we'll dive in the next module. This, however, is how Nuxt works. Easier Vue development by using folders and files and server-side pre-rendering.